I'm joined now by Cornelia Meyer. She's with MRL Corporation. Cornelia, thank you so much for joining us. When we look at the IEA and the OPEC outlooks, and again, the fact that we come here together at the International Energy Forum to compare, contrast, what are you hearing from all of your colleagues inside?
Well, I think what I'm hearing and what's very good when you compare to what the outlooks look now to what they looked, let's say, 10 years ago, there's a really remarkable convergence of looking at the world in a similar way, which is very helpful because if, for me as an analyst or for people who run an oil company, who run an airline, it is very reassuring if the people who look after the sort of OECD world, the IEA, and the people who produce the oil, OPEC, look at the world in a similar way, because if they are on totally different planets, how will you plan?
And indeed, the International Energy Forum really put in place to bring that consumer-producer dialogue. How important, in your work, do you think that dialogue actually is? Is it absolutely vital?
That dialogue is absolutely crucial because look at it, when you're the producer, you need to, your customer is the people who buy the oil, so you need to know where the demand is going. On the other hand, if you are a consumer, you need to know where the supply is coming from, and also you need to have a bandwidth in price of where it's moving. Yes, of course you can hedge, but every hedge will expire, so if it's wildly fluctuating, if you're an airline, how can you plan your budget?
Of course, one of the areas that everybody looks at too is the volatility in this sector. But the market will never get rid of volatility. It's almost part and parcel. So it's almost about managing that and making sure that they're maybe ahead of the curve when it comes to volatility. What was the feeling when people were talking about?
Yeah, well, I think it's about volatility. Yes, there will always be volatility, but I think the OPEC, non-OPEC alliance, OPEC plus, actually brings in a certain amount of stability because they try to even out some of that volatility. So we are not going from 150 to 20 and back up. And you've seen that Khalid Al-Faleh and Mr. Barkindo from OPEC, as well as Minister Novak from Russia, have done a really fine job trying to always put barrels on the market when the price was getting too high and take barrels out of the market when the price was getting too low. So to manage that. And then you talk to people like Bob Dudley, the CEO of BP, who says, look, for me to manage my company and to be able to attract investment, to have my investors allow me to put in investment, I need oil to trade in a bandwidth. I cannot have it wildly fluctuating.
How important do you think then are the outlooks? A lot of work go into the outlook every year, and again, this is a document, a very well studied document, a very well put together document that really lots of people have tremendous use of.
Well, the outlooks are very important because it's, in many ways, I say you can see the grass grow. They try to look at trends, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 1 year from now, and we need to look at those trends to gauge, where oil will be, where renewables will be, where the various sources of energy will be. And again, as a consumer, you need to know whether you're doing the right thing, and as a producer, you need to know how much demand for your product you have.
Now, OPEC gets a little pressure from the consumer side from time to time. But again, I think, and would you agree that, at the very heart of what OPEC does at times, of course, is the consumer. I think they make their decisions with the consumer in mind. As
Mr. Barkindo, the Secretary of OPEC, says so aptly, and Khalid Al-Faleh, the Minister of Industry and Energy of KSA, says their job is to really manage that relationship and manage the fact that you don't have wild fluctuations. So in that sense, the OPEC is trying to do right by the producer, of course, that's their constituency, but they're also trying to do right by the consumer. And that's very usual. That makes a lot of sense because where am I as a producer if my consumers go away?
Give me your take here as we're in February 2019 really on the health of the oil industry as we're 2 months into the year.
Well, the health of the oil industry is good, and we've seen that a lot of barrels came off from Iran, a lot of barrels came off from Venezuela, a lot of barrels came off from the OPEC, non-OPEC agreement of 1.2 million barrel cuts of last December. So the price has been nicely in a nice bandwidth, somewhere between 56 and 70, which is good. I think we're in a good place. What worries me more is the medium term, because I don't see that investment, that long-term investment going in. I see it going in from this region, from the national oil companies. I see Aramco investing, I see ADNOC investing, I see all these companies investing, but I don't see the BPs, the Totals of this world really investing enough to replenish their dwindling reservoirs.
And again, it is all about investment, because even though we're in a transitional period, but fossil fuel, there's still huge demand, and the growth in energy, even in the next 10 years, it is huge, and it will probably be a lot of pressure on fossil fuel. So actually that investment really has to happen, would you say?
But that investment has to happen because the reservoirs are sort of not, they're dwindling, and so you need to find new sources. That's one thing. And also, let's not forget, even if we have a transformation and we go to less carbon-intensive fuels, well, the one thing that will happen is by the year 2050 we will have 9.5 to 10 billion people on planet Earth. They all want to be transported somewhere. They want to live in a warm environment or in an air-conditioned environment. So we need energy. We basically need every barrel, every molecule, every solar panel, and every windmill we can get.
And just finally, when we look at the role of the International Energy Forum, here been established obviously in Riyadh and operating to really bring that dialogue together, how would you say, how important is the International Energy Forum?
I think it's crucial, because the International Energy Forum is really the only institution with no axe to grind. With the IEA, you can always say, oh, well, they look after the OECD countries. With OPEC, you can say, oh, they look after the producers. With the EIA, you can say, oh, they have the American interest at heart, as they should. They're an American institution. The IEF is the energy organization with the most member countries in the world. And it has no axe to grind. It's there equally for producers and equally for consumers. So it was very, very far-sighted to create the International Energy Forum, and it's very aptly led by the Secretary General. So this is a good thing.
Super. Well, thank you so much, and we hope we'll see more of you here. Thanks.
Thank you very much.